Hi, everyone. Welcome to the afternoon session. My name is Kirk Gessler. I work for the Chicago Tribune. I also adjunct teach at Northwestern when I have time and can escape the Chicago Tribune. Again, welcome. This has been a pretty fun session so far, or whole presentation so far. So, I mean, it really underscores for me that we're really living in kind of a golden age of digital journalism. I mean, readers are treated almost every day with these elaborate multimedia projects and long-form narratives. It's amazing when you think about it. However, even here at the NCSA, what are we going to talk about today? Not an algorithmic scientific breakthrough on audience, but just simply words. Because I can assure you, in whatever you do, whether you're a professional or college, that the most important thing that we have to do is retain. Hi.
Yeah.
I just got going.
Perfect.
Awesome.
We don't have to introduce you because you're here.
I'm here. Because again, the most important thing we all have to do is retain and grow audience. And some of these elaborate long-form projects, while they do a great job of doing that, can also be a tremendous resource stress on smaller newsrooms. I mean, they're cool, they're awesome. And when you look at them on mobile, they don't have quite the same effect. And for us at the Chicago Tribune, we're 66% mobile. We had 51 million visits last month on 34 million unique visitors, which makes us, medium size, medium large. But that is how most of your projects are going to end up going. So come Monday, when we're all done with these fun sessions, and you're not going to immediately launch the next Serial or the next Snowfall. You might launch the next, I don't know, Serial Bot or maybe Snowfall VR, which actually sounds cool now that I say it out loud. And you should try. But what I want to talk about here today is something that will have an immediate and direct benefit to the great works of journalism you guys are already doing, and that's just simply focus on words. And not just any words, but those few words on top of your stories, because I can absolutely guarantee you that most newsrooms, including the Chicago Tribune, don't care enough about those few words atop the stories. And in the end, they're so critical in a very mobile and messaging-centric environment where everything is urgent, everything is immediate, and everything is compressed down so far. So that is what we're going to spend our time very valuably today. This is our agenda, and we'll see what time we have. I'm going to go through a lot of tips, some spectacular failures. And let me tell you this is somewhat cathartic for me because we have had some of the most embarrassing headlines, and I am happy to put them up here and share in these failures. And then if we have time, and I'm hoping that we do, I do want to go through an in-class exercise where I'll kind of group you guys up and see if you could actually do better than we did on some headlines here. But this is informal, right? So if you have some questions, raise your hand, stop me. You have mics. I think you have to press and hold down the mic to do it. But I got to be honest with you, I'll hear you anyway. So stop me anytime if you have questions or whatever else. But I just want to get into this as much as possible because I want this to be, above anything else here all day, just a very pragmatic session on what you can do that will absolutely affect engagement and bottom line on the work that you're doing. So I think my acquaintance, Willa Remus and Slate, absolutely said it best. Local media routinely fails to emphasize the most interesting aspects of amazing stories. It hurts, but damn if he isn't true. This was his example that he built his whole blog post about. Woman tells Putnam County deputy that son 4 shot her in the back while she was driving. Well, it's an okay story, right? It's not a bad headline. Got some facts. Pro-gun Florida mom is accidentally shot by her 4-year-old son while driving after the boy found her pistol in the backseat just days after she bragged about his shooting skills. That's a little long. Google wouldn't like that. But what the Daily Mail, which I do not hold up to as a beacon of journalism, got is that they saw in that story a much more better approach. They said, you know what, those facts are okay, but this is the part that's awesome. Here she was on Facebook yesterday saying, my son is the best shooter of all, and then shot her right in the back. Now, I have to be honest with you, many journalists think they're already awesome headline writers. And I can tell you at the Tribune firsthand, we have nothing but awesome headline writers. So we have a little headline hospital to try to kind of save a lot of things. We struggle with this every day. Even after I write on Medium and blog and talk like this, it still doesn't work. We at the Tribune, we produce anywhere between 9,000 and 12,000 pieces of content a month. That's a lot. And not all of them are going to have great headlines, and there is always a push forward to get to the next thing. But you have to know when to stop sometimes. What's in this challenge for us? And I suspect with us, it's still, to some degree, it's being a newspaper, but it's probably for other media companies that have multiple platform operations, right? So it's for the Tribune, it's newspaper digital, maybe it's television digital for someone else. But anytime you're kind of serving two masters, you tend to hone your strength towards kind of one or the other, and we're still too newspapery. This is my favorite game. Let's play the guess what this newspaper headline means. Well, this isn't even the game. Probing a matter of trust. So first of all, that there is actually about a bad clergy member, but it's not about that. He stole money from someone's retirement account. Anyone want to guess what sailing sword uncertainty means? Yeah, no, right? Because that was a coal ship on Lake Michigan they were trying to legislate it out of existence, and it's still chugging on, spitting out pollutants. None of those make any sense in a digital world. Let's try a few one here. Returning to the prairie. So what's that story about? You want to take a guess? Ooh, that's a good one. Decomposition. No. Nice try, though. Anyone else? A guy sold his $500,000 home and spent the last decade creating a 60-acre prairie garden in Wisconsin. So kind of an interesting story. You wouldn't have got that from Returning to the Prairie, right? How about this one? 7 months later, a gift to mom. Anyone want to guess what this one's about? Come on. You see a mugshot, so you're like, something's wrong. Man charged with murder of aspiring chef in Logan Square. The gift was the murderer of her son was arrested. Right? You got that, didn't you? Yeah. And by the way, we did crop the mugshot. So, like, people are just going and they're moving. And sometimes they're going so fast, just trying to kind of catch up with the now in the crush of what's going on, that this kind of stuff happens. So those headlines stink. Why are they still happening? For us, again, I mentioned the newspaper, it's kind of two big reasons. There is a great degree of consternation, because journalists love to argue about words and purposes, on kind of what a headline does. Does it summarize the story? Does it capture a moment? Does it complement the overall package? Should it be clever? And probably should get your attention. Now, leaving SEO aside, and I'm not going to focus a ton on SEO for this, though it will be a factor. The only job of a digital headline is to make you want to read it. Period. The end. It's not supposed to capture a moment. How long you read it for, nothing like that, are all a product of your platform, your user experience, and stuff like that. This is supposed to get you interested and get you into it. So here is, not going to happen this year, is it? Here is our front page from last year. So of course, this is the headline that was finally sent over to us, was "At Last," which is just a great digital headline. It makes no sense. Now here, it's a complementary element to this larger mosaic on the front page, and it kind of captures the moment, right? That's not what we needed it to do online, though. And then I just kind of hinted at this right here. There's just simply less context online. In a newspaper, you get to look at everything. You might get a subhead. You might have, whether it's a rag right text or not, might imply it's a column or not. You get drop heads and pull quotes and mugshots and photos. You take it in as one element, not as an individual thing. And looking at just a headline and a link doesn't actually give you enough. It's funny, the example I have here, right when you're looking at, let's say, some kind of e-reader or RSS feed, like even knowing the source, if it's like the Boston Globe or the Houston Chronicle, gives you, okay, if I read something about state news, you get, okay, Texas, or Massachusetts or something. So there's so much more in picking up a paper where you get sections and everything else that you don't get here. The example I like to do is even the section, looking at that link in the RSS feed won't tell you what section, giving a readers a clue that Brady in the headline is Tom or Jim or Bunch, because it's in the sports section. It's Tom Brady, not in the entertainment section. Here's a great example. So this headline was sent to us online: city sleeps as its children perish. You're not really sure. You get kind of a sense of it. But here in print, you see the little SIG logo of the mugshot. Okay, this is a column. You see, here's a picture of probably a slain child. And you just get a sense of what it's all about. If all you saw this was tweeted out, you'd have no good sense of what this story was about. Online, a bad headline on a good story means fewer people read that story. It is that simple. You must have an absolute sense of desperation when writing web headlines. Like those 5 to 7 or 8 words mean the difference between that feature's life or death. Because it does. Bad headlines on great stories is the way journalism goes to die. Okay, rules of engagement here. Other than you get to interrupt me whenever you want with stuff. I'm going to always be discussing here today mostly writing headlines, people creating headlines for people. I'm not going to talk about SEO. That's a different conversation and one that we have some control over and then some don't. I just want to talk about writing engaging headlines. 2, it's not feasible for even us to do this with every single story that we write. We're not going to sweat 11,000 headlines a month. It's not possible. I'll tell you what we did to pick where we start writing these kind of headlines on, though. 3, I'm not here to sell you cool tools. If you have enough audience to use something like Chartbeat or Parsely or Outbrain, where you can get kind of some real-time metrics, you do not need A/B or multivariate headline testing tools. We've used some that come up with some of these approaches. But if you just have enough where you could say, wow, 10 people are on that story, I changed the headline, now 25 people are on it, that's enough to make a difference. You can do these approaches. And lastly, and this is the sad part, is readers are very unpredictable. There are many times where I go to the homepage and I'll be like, oh my God, that's the worst headline in the world. And I'll be like, man, I'll go on Slack, I'll be like, change that headline, it's terrible. And one of my producers will be like, but it's one green on the homepage, it's getting clicked through a lot. I'll be like, oh, okay, fine, don't touch it. Or other times where we think, aha, this is just the moment. This is going to be the perfect headline. And you put it out there and it just sinks without a trace. There's a lot of science and study that I'm going to kind of put out here that we've done, but it's also an art. And there's no guarantees with any of this stuff. But I think if you take a methodical approach and you look to find the best parts of the story and kind of follow some of these guidelines and tips, and these tips, this is not trade secrets. This is not something that's so arcane you're never going to get. You can figure this stuff out on your own, will overall, I think, lift your work. This is my motto, by the way, here. Patient with success and impatient with failure. Even if an opaque headline is doing well, I'll let it ride. But the second we have a bad headline on what we know to be a good story, we're going to try things. And we might try 12 different headlines to make it work. If it's important to our editorial mission or important to our brand, period. Yes?
So you're changing this headline, the story's live, and you're just I don't like it, I'm changing it?
You got it.
Okay.
Absolutely. And now we have the ability with our CMS to do it 2 ways. We could change the headline globally, where the story level headline would change as well as it would change on section fronts, or we could run tests and say just change it on the homepage. Now at the Chicago Tribune, we still get pretty good traffic to our homepage. As a large regional publisher, people still, when news happens, you see our homepage traffic do this. So even though the New York Times is doing great, but their homepage traffic is going down, people are getting to them sideways a lot, and that's happening to us. But our homepage is usually one of our top 5 most popular pages every single day. Our own page is kind of doing a long, slow decline. So by doing testing on just the homepage headline, we can usually find within 5 minutes we get kind of a conclusive example of, hey, this is a better headline. Or we might know right away, wow, 7 months later, a gift to mom, we're just going to change it globally and move on. So, but yeah, we will absolutely change headlines. Okay, headline tips. God, okay. This is always a moment of embarrassment here, but we're going to go through a lot of things here. So the rule one here is this isn't theoretical stuff. Every headline I'm going to show you that we changed at least doubled real-time engagement. So this is not, oh, might have done, would have done. All these were absolutely changes where if we had 200 people on a story, we then had 400 people on the story within 5 minutes. Looks like that. Change the headline, pow. That's the kind of difference we're talking about here. Okay, number one, this is the most basic one, right? Be clear and fact-rich. Nothing, nothing, nothing is more important than clarity. Straight headlines aren't dull, they are lean and effective. Specific like numbers are awesome. This is a great headline. Chicago cop fired for shooting at wrong car 16 times in off-duty incident. You got a lot of detail there, right? He's a cop, but he wasn't even on duty. He decided to pull out his gun and shoot at the wrong car in an incident. And oh, by the way, he didn't just fire one shot, he emptied his clip at the car. So, now this isn't going to win you an award, right? But this is a strong headline. So, part of being clear at times is stating what the writer and editor believe to be very obvious. This is a real challenge for us. So, our team politics will send over a headline, we'll publish a story that says homeowners face tax under mayor's budget plan, right? And that works great if we were the Peoria Journal-Star only covering Peoria, because everyone knows what we mean. But as the Chicago Tribune, we cover hundreds of towns in Illinois and Indiana. Homeowners is not nearly enough. So Chicago homeowners face tax hike, and they'll be like, well, we're the Chicago Tribune, of course Chicago's implied. And I'll be like, no, Chicago's not implied. We cover Naperville and Aurora and Gary and every place else here. So it's better for SEO, and it's also better for readers too. Now you could argue maybe Mayor Emanuel isn't necessarily needed, but I guarantee you, even the Chicago Tribune, the word Chicago is still important. And by fact-rich, I do not mean assume the reader will get to the good stuff. I have a lot of arguments with copy editors. Well, you don't want to give everything away. No, act desperately. Get them into the story. Don't assume once they get into it, they'll get to that good stuff. No, give them a taste, build some drama, tell them what the good stuff is. Here you go. Local colleges offer students stress-busting activities. Right? Kind of boring, right? Kind of really boring. Therapy horses bubble wrap rooms aim to relieve college students' end of semester stress. Okay, I might read that. Deploying multiple tools key to stopping Asian carp advance, researchers say. A hammer? A screwdriver? What are we actually talking about? How are you going to get, here we go, poison pills and noise cannons. Researchers use arsenal, good word, of weapons to fight Asian carp. I'll read that one. Multiple tools. Here's the headline equivalent of City Council met last night. Mayor Emanuel releases police plan. Would anyone click on this story? There's important stuff in there, like how about police plan calls for every street cop to be equipped with tasers by summer. That is a really important story in Chicago where violence is a huge issue and police and citizen interaction and having non-lethal ways. But you would have never known that by the first one. Now, Emanuel probably should have been mayor or something like that. But you get the point of pulling out some specificity. This is an interesting one here, too. So this actually violates thousands of my principles, including puns. Daily Show in Chicago dishes deep on the city. Deep dish. Get it? Because Chicago, it's known for pizza. Like, what does that really mean? Trevor Noah broaches city's violence segregation in Daily Show taped in Chicago. Okay, this is what he was talking about specifically. There's an interesting side note here as you pull out this specificity here, and you see the little chart beat bubble of green and going up. This approach also has kind of an ancillary benefit of this. You can't really see it super well, but do you see above that jagged line of just tonnage, you see equality clicks, where it was very low and then kind of got higher? By pulling out specifics like segregation, we not only doubled traffic, but we doubled the read time on the story too, as people were looking going, well, conjecture. Where does he deal with segregation? Oh, really? And they're kind of looking for those parts in the story. So you're not only getting more audience to it, but they're staying longer to read the parts they were interested in. 2, add context. Even facts need help. Good headlines help put important stories in perspective by telling readers why it is important. Okay, this is okay. Illinois universities grapple, newspaper word, with sanctuary campus efforts. Okay, I mean, if you know what sanctuary campuses are, you kind of get it. The important part was this was under the backdrop of Trump's deportation threats. It wasn't happening in a bubble. This needed context to show you why this was happening now, why this was important. This is a good one here. Lawmakers question pricing of Northbrook Company's $89,000 MD drug. That's a, look, has some facts, right? That's a pretty good headline. Northbrook Company's $89,000 muscular dystrophy drug is sold for $1,000 in Northbrook Company. The context is the best part. It wasn't just an expensive drug. Is if you were living in Britain, you get this drug for 1/89th of the price. The context is the story. County Land Bank offers more than 4,000 vacant lots for sale. Why? Because they're selling this in at-risk neighborhoods, trying to hope people will come in, buy them cheap, and redevelop them. It's trying to help turn around struggling neighborhoods. They're not just selling it to make a few bucks. This is a weird one. So again, this is a fact-rich headline. So Cook County seeks $400,000 in amusement tax from Eva Olive and Beauty Bar. So Eva Olive and Beauty Bar are frankly two unimportant nightclubs in Chicago. And $400,000 for Cook County really is an unimportant thing. So there's some facts here that seem okay, but actually that's not the story at all. The story at all is this. Is music by a DJ fine art? Cook County judge may decide. These bars were saying they were exempt from the Cook County amusement tax because they were only having DJs. Because they said DJs is art, so we shouldn't have to pay your tax. So you almost reached a point in Chicago where a judge was going to have to decide what is fine art, thus exempt from the amusement tax, or what is non-fine art, therefore what it applies to. So you almost had this crazy precedent of law defining art. That's the important part of the story, not $400,000 to a county whose budget is in the hundreds of millions of dollars. 3, favor proper nouns. Include names like teams and locations, especially if you're a regional publisher. Also helps with SEO. But also realize that sometimes being vague may be more beneficial. This is a tricky one. Is the incident more important than the locale? Is the law more important than who proposed it? So there are times, and by the way, people are taking copious notes here. If you want to DM me on Twitter, I'll send you the whole deck later. This isn't, like I said, trade secrets. Both approaches have their place. Know when to use vagueness and specificity. Okay, note, Chartbeat just at O&A released kind of the results of a huge number of headline tests. So it was like 95,000 headline tests from 235,000 individual headlines. They found proper names and nouns had no effect. I have some conjecture on why that is. But as an aside, what I'm talking about here and what they released there, almost in lockstep. It was actually really gratifying to see. Here's where we differed. Chartbeat found that negative and positive superlatives, like this is the best or the worst bar or whatever else, did very well. I didn't have enough data to make that assumption, but I believe it 100%. I found that proper nouns and question headlines were beneficial. They did not. I believe that they didn't find proper nouns beneficial because most of the data set they were looking at were from huge publishers on a national or international scope where they weren't trying to drill down to like a local or regional level. Those, they deal with, you not only have to have, you have to be a larger, a mid-sized publisher to even have Chartbeat, then to have the resources to A/B test headlines and to do it and share the results. You're talking about a lot more of the Washington Posts and stuff like that that would do things like this. So I totally understand that in their data set, proper nouns and names did not affect it, but I can tell you for sure, at least at a regional level, even for the size of us, with 34 million unique visitors last month, names and proper nouns do matter. Here you go. Rare A5 Wagyu at Roca Acor. Who knows what Wagyu is? Okay, so we got some foodies here. And by the way, Roca Acor is not a very impressive restaurant. It's nice, but Some of the world's most expensive beef on sale in River North Restaurant. We get geography and we get context. Another one. Huge North Shore school referendum got legislative help, splits community. North Shore School District's $200 million referendum causing a civil war in Highland Park. Immediately more compelling, right? I told you this was going to be very embarrassing. I'm sharing a lot of dirty, dark secrets of headlines that went live and then we had to fix them. Oh, this may be the best one here. Farrell grateful for Gable apology but wants him out of all sports. Does anyone know what this story is? Anyone? Victim wants ex-Olympian banned after speed skating sex scandal. Now here, this has all the names, right? This is fact rich. But those names are meaningless. It's much more important here to not have the names, but have the importance of what went on. Again, both approaches. 4, write it so it reads fast. Front load critical words into your headline. This also helps with SEO. Florence Henderson, TV Scale Brady, dies at 82. An attribution, and this is somewhat controversial, but I'm telling you, it's important, has to be there, but that can come last. Police confirm serial killer escape from jail is less effective than serial killer escape from jail, police confirm. Put the best part at the front. There's no journalistic law that it has to be written this way. Write an active voice unless you shouldn't. Again, following up on that. Here you go. Oversight agency releases video of fatal shooting by Chicago police. Right? You know, the problem with that is video of fatal police shooting on Chicago's South Side released is a quicker way to read that. The second is passive, but is much more effective. It puts the focus on the video, not the lesser known police agency. In that case, it was IPRA. At least they were smart enough not to put IPRA releases police video. IPRA doesn't even exist anymore. It's COPA, by the way, in Chicago now. So think about the structure. What's the most important part? Make it read fast. Attribution go at the end. Don't be clickbaity. So as much as I'm telling you here to be engaging, be compelling, I'm not telling you here to do stupid things. You know, guess which suburb was named the nation's most boring. That is crap, and you shouldn't resort to that. This, if you continue to do stuff like that, you're going to erode brand confidence. And your brand is really important, whether you're working for your college paper, whether you're working for your local paper, or the Chicago Tribune or the Washington Post. You know, DuPage County town named most boring in nation is probably much more effective and trustworthy and ethical than trying to play the guess which band is coming to town game. Grammy-winning band coming to town. Just be a reliable source of information. Oh, in that one, that's a made-up headline. Though I could imagine a few were on the list. Chicago students' meningitis death closes school. That is a headline that would panic 250,000, the parents of 250,000 CPS students, because it doesn't say what the health school it is. You know, Lindblom Academy closed today after student 16 dies of meningitis. So even if you don't, probably Chicago's Lindblom Academy could have been it. But at least you have a sense of this is the school, and oh, by the way, if you don't know the school, at least you know it's a 16-year-old, so you're not afraid it's some preschool somewhere. This is just too vague. This will scare, 2.6 million people that live in the city of Chicago. Is the author important? Then consider including his or her name as part of the context. There are many reasons people read a story. It could be the brand, it could be the headline. Sometimes it's just who writes it. There are a series of authors, like for us, like Brad Biggs is the senior writer covering the Bears for us. Let me tell you, people read whatever Brad Biggs would write. Brad Biggs could write Bears poetry, and he would have 100,000 page views. People come to trust him so much. So there's going to be times where we advertise, hey, you know what? This is Brad Biggs. You like him. Ask a critical question. And there's two parts to this. And let the story pay off the answer. use this deliberately. You don't want to go all question heady all the time. I think more effective is when a headline teases an answer to an intriguing question. And I'll give you one example of each here. Medical advances in care of aging zoo animals lead to difficult questions. Anyone kind of know what that means? Kind of means this. Should you euthanize aging zoo animals? It's expensive to care for them. Here's the headline teases an intriguing question. Why actress Gabrielle Union wore mittens to make her Chicago neighbors feel comfortable. You're like, whoa, that's interesting. Why is that? Why is it? By the way, she's a very accomplished and wonderful actress herself, and she's married to Dwayne Wade, and he was also from Chicago. She wore them because she heard that only thugs wear gloves, and that's why she wasn't going to wear them, because she felt wearing mittens would make her more approachable with the kind of racial overtones that she found in dealing with her neighbors. So she would actually dress certain ways to try to pre-diffuse them, which is horrifying and tragic in its own way, but that's why she wore mittens. So the headline just kind of teases out, not in an unethical way, but kind of what's going on. Use descriptive and evocative words, terms that inspire or amuse or anger. University of Pennsylvania study also suggested that this is why things go viral. Click into an emotional response. So stop fearing. I know, like in your story, you don't want to make it over dramatic and kind of, lay out heavy on the adjectives and words with power. In headlines, you can do this. So here's a straight news headline. Jeb Bush says he is not thinking about presidential bid. Wow, seems like a long time ago, doesn't it? Jeb Bush calls media crack addicts after more presidential pestering. Just a little more lively, engaging, and shows the tapestry for the anti-media assault that's going on right now. Here's another one. Fans using resale market oppose Cubs' absolute discretion to revoke tickets. By the way, that is the ugliest damn sweater I have ever seen. What does that headline really mean? Fight between Cubs fan team highlights tenuous ownership of season tickets. They don't own the season tickets. They learned that he might sell some, and they said, you know what? Your season tickets, we're just going to pull them. You don't go to enough games a year to justify your season tickets. And they yanked them. By the way, if you look there, even the little poor baby has a Cubs sweater there. Horrifying. Avoid puns. So this is, I mentioned this earlier, this is what I'm really into. Why should you avoid puns? It always conveys a light tone. You assume the reader gets the joke. You assume there are no language barriers. You assume originality. No one's ever done this pun before. And worse, you assume that there's nothing more damn interesting in the story. Students hope for pizza the action. Get it? Because they made pizzas in class. Ha 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 ha. Here's wrestlers grappling with Haster's place in history. Really? On a story about sexual abuse of kids? You made a joke? Yep. Yeah, we did. DUI suspect up a creek following police pursuit. He literally ran from police, jumped in a creek, and swam across it. He was never up it. Just, why don't guy fled from police, swam across the creek, and the cops, as he was such a slow swimmer, he couldn't even get across the creek. Cops came up, were right there when he crossed the river, and said, thank you, sir, and took him into immediate custody. You better be a great swimmer if you're going to use that to escape from cops. Taylor Swift makes Mount Greenwood girl's heart sing. Girl has dying of cancer, and Taylor Swift called her because that was her dream to have done, just talk to Taylor Swift. Does that headline say that at all? Nope. Walmart officer bullish on alleged drink thief. The guy, this is the Red Bull bandit of Walmart. He stole Red Bull. So I get why they wanted to do a pun, bullish on Red Bull, but that doesn't even make sense. Don't do puns. Piano tuner made key decision 40 years ago. Piano, get it? Key? Oh, God. There's a recent one here. After boy sneaks into basketball gym, a Skokie police officer makes generous assist, because it's basketball, an assist. Get it? What was the story? And by the way, after we changed the headline on this story, it went from getting 2,000 page views in a day to 268,000 page views over the next 24 hours. A Skokie cop could have arrested a teen who kept sneaking into a gym. Instead, he bought him a membership. The kid, he had a membership. He wanted to play with his friends. So he kept on sneaking into the gym. He would hide under the counter. He even hid in a bathroom because he just wanted to play basketball. So they finally caught him. A cop's like, really? You used to have it, you can't afford it now? Whatever, I'll help you out here. And then Export Fitness did. That's a great story. Didn't need a pun headline. The story was there. Someone just didn't try. Have a great quote, use it. This is always, you've seen a lot of quotes in some of these second headlines here. I would never slow someone from using that. Trump testifies in Chicago about condo deal. Trump takes stand on condo deal. I don't want to be braggadocious. Okay, some words just suck, so just don't use them. I mentioned grapple and stuff like that. Parcel zoning ordinance, individual, incident year. So professional journalist jeers and decries editors who announce terrible headlines, or terrible words will be used in headlines. Like there's a lot of words that are just completely, that people use them like vi because they fit on like a one column, 4-deck headline. But people don't talk this way. People don't use flap as a noun or fans the flames of discord as a verb. So don't do that. Write how people talk. Again, I see people, I'll share I swear if you DM me on Twitter, I'll share the deck with you. Think beyond the lead. This is interesting though. So the headline has to promote the most engaging elements in the story, whether that's a number or a quote or a fact or a topic. Sometimes that's not in the lead. Now this raises kind of a larger question on was the real story missed, but like your job is to get traffic to a story, not in an unethical way, but in a compelling way. So this was a story that launched and it took a really interesting turn. So Senator Mark Kirk was going to open lobbying offices in Washington and Highland Park. That's kind of a boring story. So we started to notice it was getting shared on social kind of this way, because in the middle of that story, he, by the way, said, you know what, when Obama was president, white Republicans never got to go on Air Force One. So we kind of pivoted the headline a little bit to this, and then it immediately blew up. Because that was in the story, it was just like 6 paragraphs in, and a lot of the story was dedicated to this. It wasn't just an offhand comment. It led with, he's going to be a lobbyist, and oh, by the way, President Obama is a racist, and that was the rest of the story. So eventually, the story became, ex-Senator Mark Kirk complains white Republicans were not invited on Air Force One. And by the way, the next day, not only did we learn that white Republicans were, but that Mark Kirk had been invited 3 times on Air Force One, and he had forgotten, and he had to walk all this stuff back. A little embarrassing. But again, part of it was we started recognizing how people were sharing it on social, and then adjusted the headline to a major part of the story. It just wasn't the lead of the story. Here's another one. Horrible earthquake in Pakistan a couple years ago. You know, there was like 800 dead. But this is almost this is an AP headline that you could read anywhere, right? New island formed after massive quake in Pakistan is a much more of a standalone, oh man, this happened here. Focus on impact. Actually, I really like what Mark Jacob, my coworker at the Tribune, says. He always says, tell people why the story is about them. Because that's super important. This is important to you because of this. Exelon teams up with Big Coal in subsidy-filled Springfield bill. This was another team politics one, which is tough. I mean, Big Coal, I guess. Illinois energy bill may cost consumers an additional $24 billion, opponents say. This will affect you this way. Think twice before buying breast milk online, study. I would think yes, but why? What's the context? Most breast milk sold online contains dangerous bacteria. That is really important to know, not think twice. Your lobster roll addiction is contributing to a price spike. I'm not a doctor, so I can't tell you if lobster roll addiction is a real thing, but I have a feeling it's not. Current spike in lobster prices not seen in 10 years. Context. This is why you're spending a lot more. Uber expects to cha-ching in the new year with 2 million rides. Why do you care that Uber is going to have 2 million rides in the new year?
Because they raise their prices.
Yes, because of surge pricing. That's why you care, so say that. Jumbo size hitch in Wrigley Talks. This is when they were trying to get a giant video screen, which they now have. Don't call it a jumbo size hitch, call it what it is. Tell them what's important. Lastly, focus on one damn thing. Make absolutely sure that the single most interesting, most compelling part of your story is conveyed in your headline. Note I said single. Do not try to get 1,000 things in there. When we did that Mark Kirk headline and we tried to like cut the baby in half, that was not an effective headline. You can't get to, there's only have so many times you can convey certain things. Focus on one thing. Concentrate on that best part. Field Museum launching limited edition beer. Okay, that's kind of interesting, right? You know, a museum brewing a beer. Field Museum to sell beer based on 1,000-year-old recipe. That is really interesting. And it wasn't good. It was interesting. I read the story, I got the beer, and that's it. Man found in burning garage identified. Like you know that there's more here, right? Well, yeah, that was a guy who was acquitted of murder. He was found inside his garage in a burning van in a retaliation killing because he got off on the murder that other people thought he committed. That's kind of an important thing to get to. This is a good one here. So this isn't bad. Mount Prospect cops seek home intruder scared off by girl's scream, semicolon. The second you see a semicolon in the headline, it's trying to do too much. Video released. Just go in on the important part. Video shows home invader kick in door of Mount Prospect home, run from girl's screams. Again, we changed it, it did better. That's the important part. Okay, how much time do I have here? About 20 more minutes here. I'm gonna show you what we did and how we operate on headlines. Number one, so I said we can't do 12,000 headlines a month. So what we ended up doing was we did a 3-month content study to determine what our audience most valued for us. It was part of a larger process, but it essentially told us that we should focus on things like breaking news and bears and historic preservation and politics. I won't get into the methodology of this, but it wasn't just like what section. We essentially did this in 3 dimensions, looking at multiple different taxonomies to determine this. So we ended up saying, okay, these are the stories, these are the types of stories that our audience most want. Let's make sure that these are where we focus headlines on. So the first reaction, if we see a Cubs story or an architecture story not doing well, isn't to say, well, the story stinks, move on. It's to say, wait a minute. That's one that traditionally has done well. Let's try some headlines. Let's try changing the photo. Let's care more about this one. We also try to pre-write multiple headlines as much as possible, especially in project stuff. Don't just assume that that one headline is enough. If you've got the time where it's not going to run for a month, write some other headlines. Target length, by the way, should be about 75 characters. Sometimes you hear 77 or other for headlines, but be willing to exceed this to a max of like 110. We did a study, by the way, of Google News headlines that we've never released. So this is like new data for everyone here. So we did a study. This is like 12,000 Google News headlines. We found some on Google News as short as 18 characters and others as long as 309 characters. So if someone tells you it'll never be on Google News if it's 85 characters, I can tell you they're wrong. It will be indexed and could get there. We found the most success, though, around 75, no more than 110. Watch the real-time metrics, be prepared to act. Don't be satisfied with an okay headline. And then another thing we do is we treat headlining like a team sport. So we're in Slack all the time, and we'll start someplace, and we'll be like, okay, like here's kind of an example. I want to read it all to you. So we had when Foxconn was going to move to Wisconsin, their manufacturing process, and this is just a look at what we were doing in Slack, where one of the business people said, okay, Wisconsin beats out Foxconn's LTD plant. Do you want an alert? And all we did is like, no, Foxconn isn't enough. We should say Apple supplier. How many jobs? Let's focus on this. So we ended up after kind of talking back and forth for only about 7 minutes. ended up all coming with almost the exact same headline. Apple supplier Foxconn to open factory in southern Wisconsin may bring 10,000 jobs. iPhone maker Foxconn open. But it took that conversation for us to say, no, let's talk about jobs. No, let's make sure people know what Foxconn is first. So it can't just be like one person in a bubble being the only person accountable for your headlines. Talk a lot, do a lot more. We do have time. Okay. I'm going to pass some stuff out here. I'm going to pass you out a story. I'm going to tell you what the shitty headline on it was first. I'm going to just kind of put some here. You have to work in at least twos. You may not work alone. May not. So find a friend, find two friends. Because headlining is a team sport. This is a story we published. I will tell you what the crappy headline we got first was in a second. Let's put some here. Pass some down. Hi.
Hi.
So get together, read the story. This is, this is a story that we had here. Read it for 5 minutes, then we'll gather in about maybe 12 minutes and talk about maybe 10 minutes. So take 5 minutes to read it and 5 minutes to write a headline. This is the headline that we got on this story originally. Delnor nurses sue Kane's sheriff's office. And you all can do way better than that, I assure you. Then I'll tell you where we settled at the very end here. But you got 10 minutes. And you're done. Time's up. Who wants to share? Who volunteers a headline? Who wants to share first?
Heroic nurses sue deputy who abandoned them during hospitalization.
Oh, that's good. Abandon them. There's a real sense. There's emotion there. There's real kind of pathos. I like that. Who else?
If I can read my edits. Nurses held hostage by unsupervised escaped inmate at Geneva Hospital file suit.
File suit. Okay. Good. Again, a lot of proper nouns, very fact-rich. You know exactly where the geography we're talking about is. Next. Come on. Okay.
Nurses abused, raped by escaped felon as guards slept.
Right there. So for you guys, the suit was certainly less important than the facts of the case that this was going on. That's great.
We got the first part. Raped, beaten, and shot here, and there's suits for criminal assault that shouldn't have happened.
That shouldn't have been. No, but exactly. The specifics of the crime were the most horrific part of this. Back corner. What do you guys got?
Officer hid while escaped inmate stole gun, sexually assaulted nurse, lawsuit says.
So you right to the officer hiding. You know, again, that's a really compelling thing that this guy literally ran and hid when you should be protecting people. Any other volunteers?
We had suicidal inmate raised here in Sac not being shackled by Kane County Sheriff.
Not being shackled. Excellent. Again, there's so many elements you could take here. Anyone else want to volunteer? Have something totally different? Yep.
Nurses left traumatized for life after inmate takes them hostage, sue King Sheriff.
So you have some scale, like it's not you're traumatized for life, pulling some language right out of the suit and kind of what happened. This is great. Yes?
Well, my question would be, what is the context of the story in relation to what's already been reported? Because the way that the story is written
Yep.
is that the news angle is that
Is the suit. Absolutely.
the rest of this background that's already been reported
Yes.
previously.
Yes, and that you couldn't have known that, and we could have sat here for 3 hours and done this. Absolutely, yes.
Isn't that the hard part in writing online headlines? Because we can't assume our readers have read anything before.
Yes.
And the interesting part of this story isn't that it's simplified.
You're,
That's our newsroom judgment.
it is. So the question, these are two pieces that are not in opposition, but it's an issue of scale and emphasis. You're right. You have to say that this is part of an ongoing thing that you guys have covered before. At the same time, you can't let the rote, well, this is the 5th story we've written about this, so let's just detail with Delnor nurses sue. You have to do both. Yes?
But if the rest of the story is background, if you've already reported of what happened
What happened.
in the jail, then if you put a headline on it that talks about what happened in the jail.
Then it looks like a story from 2 weeks ago.
Right.
Exactly. The only thing I would say, I would always I would definitely lean away from assuming your audience has read everything you've ever written always on this. And focus on some of the new parts of this thing. Hold on, so what did we end up with here? Help, oh, hold on, there we go. Deputy ran and hid after inmate stole weapon, took hostages at hospital, lawsuit. So we back-ended the attribution on the lawsuit. And this, a lot of you guys had this almost the same kind of format. That this was a new suit filed was important to the overall story arc of our coverage, but we felt it to be the least important part. This is where the attribution is coming from. This is the accusation. So that's accusation and scale, and then we focused on this. That doesn't mean this is more or less right. Frankly, there's a lot of compelling arguments you guys have teased out of this. There's not one way to do things, but this is the approach that we took with this. Questions? I need a new photo. That's terrible. Or I need a new face. Anything else that I haven't dealt with here that I can answer right now? Yes?
So one of the things that I feel like when we're talking about, platform distribution of headlines and Facebook and Twitter and, so Google is one thing.
Yeah.
And but given how people are consuming news and that they're often just scrolling, how do you feel about, having opinion or now? I mean, I feel pretty strongly about having opinion.
Yes.
If it's an opinion piece, that should be the first.
100%.
And if you add, I just feel like playing in a different ballgame.
Yes, but I will say this. So we might not opinion pipe or opinion colon this, but we might say, President Trump needs to be immediately impeached, comma, writes editorial writer Steve Chapman or something like that.
If on Facebook, the only part they see is President Trump needs to be impeached.
On Facebook, if you have link ownership on Facebook, you can still edit your headlines. So what we will do if you look at our Facebook feed, we'll go all caps, column, dot, opinion, dot. So every platform, and so what we will do is actually, let's say it's a Steve Chapman column, impeach Donald Trump. So what we call the post text might say, it is time now, we need to impeach President Donald Trump, comma, Steve Chapman, link to his page writes, and then we will edit the headline, because if you have link ownership, Facebook still allows you to edit your headlines. We will then go column or opinion. So we will do both on Facebook. We will do one on Twitter, 100%, because so much, you don't want the brand saying that, just as much as you don't want the brand saying, Mike Glennon is a terrible quarterback, the Bears should start Mitch Trubisky. There's a lot of things on social where the brand has no business saying these things. And sometimes it's as nominal as who we favor as a starting quarterback. But you need to do that. Your headline on your site should not be your tweet, should not be your Facebook post. They all have to be discrete and different, because those are completely different platforms that require different levels of things. I think I'm being hushed. Any other questions? Yes?
Do live charting at different times of day, or just whenever you release your story and you follow it for X amount of time, and then make a determination if the headline needs to be changed?
For it depends on a lot of things. So the real-time metrics for headline changes are important for us. So we look at what are going to be the high-impact stories of the day, and then we'll chart those real-time. Then we also go back and look for those topics all the time. Yet. So it's real-time metrics, focusing on that, A/B testing, multivariate testing, and then don't just get caught in the now all the time. Step back. Has your audience changed some? Do we look at things? Are there categories we should worry about? Again, I would love to focus headlines across everything. We're pretty much looking at kind of section front, homepage things, big things on social. Any other questions? I'll be around too. So I know we're going to lose this room, and we probably are right now, but see me whenever. There's also a lot cooler things that are like bots and drones and stuff like that than just words. So go everything else. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the time.